In this video, we will be discussing the Minnesota Manual Dexterity Test. The Minnesota Manual Dexterity Test, also known as MMDT, is a standardized test used to evaluate a subject's ability to move small objects various distances. This test measures a subject's rapid eye-hand coordination as well as arm-hand dexterity. For this test, you will need the instruction manual, the test board, 60 black and red plastic discs, a testing table that should be between 28 and 32 inches in height because the subject will stand at the table throughout the administration, a stopwatch or clock that reads in seconds, as well as the score sheet. The MMDT includes instructions for two test batteries, the placing test and the turning test. Each test battery is listed in separate sections in the manual. The directions are presented in a step-by-step format. One trial should always be given for practice. The test administrator should demonstrate the test to the subject before starting the practice trial. 4 test trials in addition to the practice trial are highly recommended. The fewer trials administered, the less test score reliability. For individual testing, norms are provided for interpreting a total score based on 2, 3, or 4 test trials. Group testing norms are based on 3 and 4 test trials only. For the starting position of the placing test, you should put the board on the table about 10 inches from the edge. Insert the disc into the holes in the board. Lift the board up, allowing the disc to fall through the holes and remain in straight rows and columns on the table. Then you place the board directly in front of the discs. If the discs moved out of place, manually realign them. The board should now be about 1 inch from the edge of the table closest to the subject. The object of the placing test is to see how fast you can put the discs into the holes of the board using only one hand. You will want to use your dominant hand. When demonstrating, if you are facing the subject across the board, remember to demonstrate on your left, if the subject is starting with the right hand. Also remember that top to the subject is bottom to you. The subject will begin on their right or dominant side and pick up the bottom disc and insert it into the top hole of the board. They will then pick up the next disc in the column on the right, and so on. They will move from right to left on this test. Once they complete one column, they will repeat the previous sequence in the second column until they have filled the entire board. You will start the stopwatch as soon as you say the word go. During the practice trial, you can provide assistance to the subject if necessary. For the turning test starting position, you should put the board on the table about 1 inch from the edge closest to the subject. Insert all the discs into the holes in the board with either the red or black side facing up. The color must be consistent on the whole entire board. The object of the turning test is to see how fast the subject can pick up the discs with one hand, turn them with the other hand, and replace the disc back into the holes on the board. When demonstrating, if you are facing the subject across the board, remember to demonstrate on your right first because the subject must start with their left. Also remember that top to the subject is bottom to you. The stopwatch should be started when you say go. During the practice trial, you can provide assistance if needed. The subject will start with their left hand to pick up the block from the upper hand corner. They will turn the disc while passing it to their right hand and return it into the original hole on the board with the bottom side facing up. They will work to their left across the board on the top row. Then with their right hand, they will pick up the first block in the second row. They will turn the disc while passing it to their left hand and return it into the original hole with the bottom side facing up. They will work to their right until they complete the entire second row. This sequence will continue until they complete the entire board. The subject will always pick up the blocks with the hand that leads and put them down with the hand that follows. If the MMDT is to be administered to a group, the test administrator should demonstrate the test on a separate board located in front of the subjects as he or she reads the directions to the group. The manual includes special group instructions. The image shown here is one arrangement that permits the test administrator to oversee the testing of many subjects during group testing. For demonstration purposes, there will only be one trial per subtest performed. The series of tests that you are going to take will measure your eye-hand-finger coordination and gross motor skills. The tests are timed, so you must complete each as quickly as you can. We'll be starting with the placing test. The object of this test is to see how fast you can put the discs into the holes of the board using only one hand. You will want to use your dominant hand. You must begin on your right. You pick up the bottom disc and insert it into the top hole of the board. Now you must pick up the next disc in the column on the right, and so on. You will move from right to left on this test.
Once you complete one column, repeat the previous sequence in the second column until you have filled the entire board. You may hold the board with your free hand if you wish to do so. Do you remember the order in which you pick up the discs and place them?
Yes.
You must make sure that all of the discs are fully inserted into the holes of the board before the trial is complete. If you dropped a disc, you must pick it up and insert it into the proper hole before the time is stopped. Your score will be the total number of seconds it takes to complete several trials. We will record the time for each trial separately. When you finish one trial, we must rearrange the board and discs into the starting position before starting another trial. Please do not touch the discs until you hear further instruction. You may put your hand on the first disc. Ready?
Yep.
Go. You will now be doing the turning test. The object of this test is to see how fast you can pick up the discs with one hand, turn them with the other hand, and replace the discs back into the holes on the board. With your left hand, you will pick up the block from the upper right-hand corner. You will turn the disc while passing it to your right hand and return it into the original hole in the board with the bottom side facing up, which for you is black. You must work to your left across the board on the top row. Now with your right hand, you pick up the first block in the second row, turn the disc while passing it to your left hand and returning it to the original hole with the bottom side facing up. You will work to your right until you complete the entire row. As you work back to the left in the third row, you will use your left hand to pick up the disc and your right hand to return it back to the original hole. Working back to your right on the fourth row, you will use your right hand to pick up the disc and your left hand to return it. You must make sure that all of the discs are fully inserted into the holes of the board before the trial is complete. If you dropped a disc, you must pick it up and insert it into the proper hole before the time is stopped. Your score will be the total number of seconds it takes to complete several trials. We will record the time for each trial separately. When you finish one trial, the board and disc should be already in the starting position for another trial. In other words, the opposite color on the disc is now exposed. Please do not touch the discs until you hear further instructions. Put your left hand on the disc in the top right-hand corner of the board. Ready?
Yep.
Go.
The score in any test at the MMDT is the total seconds required to complete the chosen number of test trials. 2, 3, or 4 test trials may have been administered. The practice trial time is not included in the total score. The information presented in the interpretation chart are taken from the 1946 Manual for the Minnesota Rate of Manipulation. These norms are based on the distribution of scores obtained from 3,000 cases tested by the Employment Stabilization Research Institute at the University of Minnesota. The sample was comprised largely of adult, older, unemployed people of the Depression area to 1946. Here's a test that shows the placing test normative values. Here's a chart that shows the turning test normative values. In the MMDT interpretation chart, the first 2 columns of normative values are used to interpret scores made when the placing and turning tests are administered as group tests, and when an examinee is given 4 trials. All other entries constitute norms for the test administered as individual tests. Separate norms are given for use when the examinee is administering 4 trials, 3 trials, and 2 trials. You can find this information on the online manual at the below link. The report completed by Jerkinson of 1943 concerns the use of the MMDT in a corporation that manufactures pulp, paper, and paper specialties. The group tested was all men that were hired as converting machine operators in the paper mill. All were right-handed high school graduates aged 18 to 31 years old. 3 supervisors independently rated each worker on a scale of 5, and then the ratings were converted. This table includes the validity coefficients. Jorgensen determined reliability on 4 tests of the MMDT by correlating time on first and second trials and correcting with the Spearman-Brown formula. The table includes estimates of the reliability of 2-trial and 4-trial tests. Here are my references, and thank you for watching.